Good evening. Tonight, ISU has some competition, America's Space University. Boeing continues to look under every carpet for Starliner fixes. SpaceX announces Starlab, a full space station launched by a single Starship in one go. Europe is using Skylon tech to build their own hypersonic space plane. A place called Andhra, which is a state in India, is making a $3 billion investment in not one, but two space cities. And NASA is looking for public input for a design for a new ejection system. All that, and our guest, Michelle L.D. Hanlon. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Okay, as you know, this program is brought to you by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. And what do? You know, you could say it with me now at this point. We champion and strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable small and medium enterprises, and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advocacy, access, and advisory across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. Now, a lot of our work, especially this show, is supported by our listeners and fans like you. So if you go to the QR code at the upper left of the screen, it will take you to our donation portal. In addition, for our Spotify fans, we're hopefully going to put a new link in the comment feed, but we'll see. A lot of it is audio, I understand, so that may not work too well, but we're going to keep getting through to you. Keep helping us out. A little in the tip jar each month makes a big difference. So thanks in advance. Now I have slightly bad news. Michael Lane will not be joining us this evening as he's taking care of his mom, who suffered a medical event over the weekend, and they're still doing things to her in the hospital, and he's spending all his time with her. And so our heart goes out to Michael, and we send our best to his mom, of course, and hopes for a speedy recovery. So let's go into the news a little bit. America's Space University just launched, and it was launched by, it's right here in Florida. And let's see where my thing is. Boom, boom, boom. And there we go. They're going to launch a new space MBA degree in spring of next year. And the applications for that program, which is fully online, and it's a part-time graduate business program, it's open until December 1st. And this is in Florida Space Coast at the University of Central Florida, which is down the road from me. And they established this to support the space commercialization industry and a global space economy that's projected to reach 1.8 trillion by 2035. Now, interestingly, this whole thing was a brainchild and a production of someone who's familiar to this program, Dr. Greg Autry. He's been on our show before. He's the Associate Provost for Space Commercialization and Strategy at UCF. But he's also President Trump's nominee to become NASA's Chief Financial Officer. And so he's very, very busy. He's building these things. And he says he wanted students to come to UCF knowing they can participate in an industry that's taking off no matter what field they're actually interested in. And so he wants to make University of Central Florida one of the best places to launch the next stage of their career. So it's a fully online part-time graduate business program spanning 24 months in which students will take a set of core MBA courses plus 4 electives on space entrepreneurship, governmental and space finance, space leadership, and global space domain. So this is an interesting thing that they're putting together because they're right in direct competition with the International Space University that also has a chapter right here in Florida, probably not far from UCF. I don't know what Andy Aldrin has to say about that, but I'll try to get him on for an interview sometime soon and see. Now, the next thing on our list, it's a short news day today, so we'll get through this quickly. We'll get right to our guest. She's going to be a lot of fun. We mentioned last week that that Boeing Starliner is still having problems, and NASA's already announced, yeah, we'll let them fly next year, but it's not going to be a crewed flight, and so it'll be lucky to be a supplier on, I guess, at this point, because it's still trying to solve the problems. And the latest article that just came out shows that they're continuing to look for solutions. I see these people like looking under the carpets at the Boeing building in Seattle, going, "Where is it?" They're pushing. They have a helium plug seal leak. There's problem with thermal shunts. There's issues with overheating thrusters, and they've been working on this for how long now? And they're still working on it. They'll be lucky to carry cargo in this thing, and their propulsion supplier, interestingly, is not they themselves. It's a California-based contractor, Aerojet Rocketdyne, which is a bigger defense contractor. But it's been plagued by problems. It's already more than $2 billion over budget, and it's currently grounded. So, and you know the rest of the backstory, viewers of our show, of that thing. But I just thought it's interesting that they're not taking the news well, and they're like running around trying to find the problems to fix and try to fix them in time, even for next year's launch. Now, here's an interesting thing. Elon Musk, I guess, just decided he wants to get into the private space station game along with everybody else, it seems. And he thought, well, this is interesting. Why don't we just build one module, put the entire thing in a Starship and launch it all at once and just deploy it and go with it? And they call it Starlab. And so maybe by the end of this decade or the beginning of next one, these things are going to start happening. So there are already things being cooked up by Blue Origin, Sierra Space, Axiom Space, Vast Space, and now I guess we're going to have Starlab joining us up there. I like the idea. I wish all these private space station guys success, because sooner or later the ISS will go, and when it does, we need to have lots and lots of alternatives to be used in lots of different ways. So Starlab Space, good luck, and I hope you can do as well as all the other guys are doing. Coming up next, well, here's an interesting thing. At first I wasn't really sure about this. Europe is working to launch something they call Invictus. They want to build their own hypersonic space plane by 2031. I thought, well, okay. What I didn't see when I first saw the headline is that they're actually leveraging tech that the British company Reaction Engines developed for a huge space plane called Skylon. And a lot of people have been hearing about Skylon for many, many years. And unfortunately, they just went broke. They went under. But now some of that stuff is going to be redeployed, reused, reworked into something that a new hypersonic space plane, which will start flying by 2031 if all goes according to plan. It's called Invictus, and ESA is funding a lot of it. And it's also led by the consulting firm Fraser Nash. So they're going to leverage that technology. And I guess the key piece is something called a pre-cooler that Reaction Engines built and tested for their Sabre synergetic air-breathing rocket engine. And so the Sabre engine combined aspects of both jet and rocket propulsion. It was designed to pull oxygen out of the air during flight at lower levels of the atmosphere, reducing the need to carry as much propellant. And so I guess ESA saw that this stuff looked very, very compelling, and they took advantage of Skylon's problem, and they're going to and they're funding it. They're funding. It's not a huge project yet. They're only funding about £7 million so far, or 9.4 million US at current exchange rates. But it could have a big impact on European spaceflight. They're on the march to build their own independent capabilities. So this is just another step in that direction for them. Okay. Now, moving over to India, there's this there's a southern Indian state called Andhra Pradesh, and that's the home to India's lone operational spaceport, which is Satish Dhawan Space Center. And they just revealed to the public their state space policy for 2025 to 2030. And according to the Andhra government, the policy will facilitate investments amounting to about $3 billion US in their space sector over the next decade and create 5,000 jobs and 30,000 indirect jobs and other domains. And so they're scaling up their ambitions, their private sector ambitions. They're making the most of their location and their industrial capacity and their institutional ecosystem and, of course, human capital to further India's space ecosystem. And I guess there's a third and larger launch pad already being built at ISRO's SDSC spaceport in Andhra, and the state's proximity to other aerospace hubs. These are logistical and technological advantages for component sourcing, talent access, and cross-sector collaboration. They have a diverse industrial base. And so they're building 2 dedicated space industrial zones, which they call space cities. One in the Sri Satya Sai district and the other one in the Tirupati district, wherever they are, but they're pretty close to the launch facility. And both these facilities would be hubs for design, R&D, manufacturing, and launch-related things. So, and they want to foster international collaborations and partnerships as well in critical space technologies. So, a lot of countries are building out, not just ESA, not just us, but India, and China's in there. They're doing a lot. Russia's not doing as much, but they're keeping up, and they're still sending crews to the ISS. So. These things are building up, and it's fun to watch. So I wish them all the success in the world to go there. And finally, this is a short item without Michael to bounce off of. This didn't take long at all. Check it out. NASA is issuing a challenge for a public design of a new ejection system, and so. They offered a challenge for people who think they can solve what they call a capability gap in its stratospheric projectile entry experiment. And they're building a 2-stage stratospheric drop test architecture, and they're under development to bridge a state-of-the-art gap that flagship missions need to reduce system risks. And so the current ejection system designs are conceptual, complex, and untested, they say. And so NASA is looking for alternative ideas that can be incorporated into the design of their next iteration of speed for flight vehicles to increase their system reliability. And so they're putting a challenge out to the public to design innovative concepts for a separation mechanism that can be used to assess NASA and commercial reentry vehicle stability. Not a lot of prizes. It's just a design competition right now. So there's $3,000 first place prize and $7,000 in total prizes. Not a lot, but it may lead to other things. And so to them, the successful outcome is a credible 3D model of a separation mechanism using easy to manufacture methods such as 3D printing or laser water jet cutting. And of course, COTS can run off-the-shelf parts, and they don't rely on high energy systems like explosives. So the challenge began on Monday, and it will end September 8. And if you want details, you can go to a site called grabcad, grabcad.com. So that was pretty wild. It was a little short news cycle today, but it was a lot of fun. And people are coming in. I've been reading all these stories. I'm not looking to see who's all here today. Oh, look, Jason's here. Morty's here. So I hope a lot more people come in and say hello. At any rate, we're going to move on to this evening. Is going to be a lot of fun. And we get to get her in early a little bit today. We've been having a series, as you know, on space law and especially space property rights and other things of that nature. We've had some very, very passionate conversations about these issues with several other of our guests in recent weeks, especially since ISDC. And so, but this one is, I think, is kind of unique. This is going to be fun because her name is Michelle L.D. Hanlon. She's a space lawyer, is a partner at ABH Space Law, but she's also a co-founder of an organization called For All Moonkind, which is dedicated to setting up all our moon landing sites as heritage sites and protect them. Would you believe it? Because in real life, there's a heritage site somewhere in Africa for the first fossilized footprint of a hominid human that 2 million years ago first stood up on two legs and left this nice, lovely footprint. That's a protected heritage site. But Neil Armstrong's footprint on the moon, the picture we've been looking at for decades, not protected. That's insane, and we're gonna talk about it. Hey, Wes Fairs, how you doing? You're here, and so let's introduce her right now, Michelle L.D. Hanlon, space warrior extraordinaire. Uh, Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Great, Thomas. Thanks for having me.
Great, I love it. Before we start, I want to use because it says as part of your little two-liner, intro. You're a drone lawyer. I have to know, what is that?
So, yeah, I know you think about drone, and everyone's like, every lawyer drones on, right?
Uh,
No, so I love drone law because it's a lot like space law. It's very nascent. There's not, we don't really haven't really figured out the regulations. We don't even know, like from the standpoint of a homeowner, where your um, personal sovereignty over your backyard ends and where the FAA begins, right? The FAA says it can regulate down to the tip of the blade of grass,
oh,
which yeah.
yeah. Oops.
So
I better
yes,
know more. They're looking.
yeah, exactly. So this is exactly what we're looking at now is okay, how we because I am a huge fan of drone delivery, of using drones for good, of drones for emergency response, drones as first responders. But we are running into a lot of issues because people have this like visceral reaction. Oh my God, there's a drone, shoot it down. There goes my privacy. And I'm
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, well, there's a satellite up there getting the same pictures, but
Right.
never mind.
For decades,
Yeah,
even.
yeah, yeah.
They read the license plate off your car from.
Right. But
Well, that raises the question because there was a story a couple of 3 years back about some guy, and he actually shot down somebody's drone that was flying over his highly fenced-in property, mostly to get pictures of his rather lovely teenage daughter, who is there just sunbathing in supposed privacy. There's this guy keeps flying a drone over his backyard to check her out. So the guy finally says, "You know what? I've had enough of this." He got a shotgun and he shot the thing down. Uh,
don't shoot it down. It's
yeah.
against the law.
Okay. All right. All right.
Sorry. And
Yeah,
and he
he had some trouble with local authorities. I just want to know, how far are we taking this?
So, drones are regulated as aircraft, and so
Yeah.
that's why we're in this really funny situation where you can't shoot down an airplane that's flying over your property, right? So you can't shoot down a drone either. It violates all sorts of federal laws. So we've got to figure that out because it's not just that gentleman. Somebody in Florida shot down a delivery drone that was flying over his backyard. It was a Walmart delivery drone, and he was like, "I don't want that thing in my backyard."
Hmm.
You can't blame him. But,
Yeah.
people don't know. I don't think he knew he was violating the law when he shut it down. He was just pissed off.
Yeah.
And so we've got to figure out a way to, it's the same thing, technology development and privacy. We
Yeah.
see that everywhere, but we're really
Absolutely.
seeing it come to a head with drones. And so that's
It's,
what we're doing. We really want to support the drone industry. We really want to have some homegrown U.S. drones that don't cost an arm and a leg, um, and we want to make sure that we don't fall behind or farther behind with respect to how we use and take advantage of drones.
so we're going to see drone wars then with corporate entities fighting it out. You got some food delivery service over here, and you got Walmart over there, and they're like, being really territorial. This is our airspace.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, people, you'd laugh, but that if we don't have regulation, and I know a lot of people hate lawyers, but if you don't
Yeah.
have regulation, then you are going to have chaos, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have stoplights for a reason on streets. And so we're going to have flight plans for these drones. And like it or not, the FAA does rule the skies. It does a pretty good job of ruling the skies safely. And so we have to work with the FAA and take all of their experience and try and bring them up to speed so that they don't stifle our drones, but help support them.
Right, right. Okay. Oh, I just wanted to throw in something. One of our guests arrived. His name is Wes Ferris. He was a space law grad from Ole Miss.
Wes is one of my students. Absolutely. Hey, Wes.
Okay. Well, he's here to say
Yeah.
hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's no doubt, still working on property rights in space.
He was one of our guests
Yep.
on all this, and he had some very interesting things to say. And maybe he had interesting things to say because he wasn't officially a actual, certified lawyer. And so he didn't have certain principles beaten into him. So he could just like throw creativity out there and say, well, what else can we do? And that became a very interesting conversation. Uh, Wes is a great guy. He was in my business track at ISDC, and he was
Okay.
like the last guy there, but he stirred up the room so much. Yeah, everybody was falling asleep at the end at 5:30 that he goes up there, stirs everybody up. Now we're like, I want to go out and have more arguments.
Yeah.
Where's my wine? Let's go. Right. Oh yeah, I love Wes. Glad he's here. Let's get a little bit just into Michelle Hanlon's backstory. How did you get here? Where did you come from? What did you do? What got you into this? What excited you into doing what you're doing right now?
So I was an M&A attorney, mergers and acquisitions attorney for 25 years.
Okay.
And I wanted to be an astronaut, didn't we all? And
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out calculus. It just slayed me. So I went into political science and then became the first lawyer in my huge extended family. And I was going to do the noble route, go to the State Department, and I just went for the money. I just said, big law, big money. I'm going to do it. Sorry, I had enough of bills.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had a blast. I really did. The everything you imagine, 80-hour work week, 80 billable hour work week in Manhattan. And then we had a baby. Whoops. And that sort of changed everything. But I have two children now. We have two children, and my oldest was when he was about 12. He said he picked up this book by Virgil Pop, who's a Romanian space lawyer, and it's called "Who Owns the Moon?" And
Okay.
he came to me and he said, "Mom, I really want to mine asteroids when I grow up." I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "But this book says there's an issue about, guess what? Property
Ownership.
ownership in
Yep.
space."
Yep. Yep.
And he said, it seems like you're a pretty good attorney. Do you think you can get that figured out before I grow up?" So sadly, he's 30 now.
No pressure.
Yeah,
Right.
he's 30 now. He gave me a lot. He went to the Navy. He was a submariner. He gave me so much time, but I did not figure it out in time. But he got me back into space. I was a child of Star Trek as well. But when he went to college, he built a bunch of CubeSats. He had and we I just fell in love with space all over again. And so when my youngest went to college, I went back to school and earned my LLM.
Okay.
And the rest is history. Well,
Wow.
not ancient history, but
No. 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 You're still raising kids.
yeah.
So okay. So again, you have a very interesting take on the whole property rights thing that we haven't discussed here in the program, and I want to devote some serious time to it. You co-founded an institution now called For All Moonkind. Uh, I like to get your story about how did you get that going? I know you're working through the UN and you're doing other things, but the purpose of it, as I understand it, and you can fill in the blanks because there's a lot. It is you want to take all our moon landing sites and turn them into some kind of protected heritage sites. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
absolutely correct. Yep.
Okay. So how you doing so far? And how do we get there? What's the process? What have you discovered?
So we've made tremendous inroads. Okay, so property ownership, Article 2 of the Outer Space Treaty. You cannot claim territory in outer space, right?
Right.
Article 1 of the Outer Space Treaty, freedom of clear access to all areas of all celestial bodies. So
Hmm.
the very idea of protecting something violates those first two tenets of the Outer Space Treaty. So what can you do, right? And you say, all right, here on Earth, we protect heritage. We have the UNESCO World Heritage Convention. Let's just apply that to space. Yay, great. Well, we approached UNESCO, and UNESCO's like, "Oh no, that's beyond sovereign territory. We want nothing to do with that. But hey, if you figure out how to do that in space, then we're going to borrow that and use those same principles in the high seas because we have heritage in the high
Hmm.
seas that different people claim."
Right. Right. Right.
So that's when, okay, that door shut. Um, and we started to really think about it. And so you really need a multilateral agreement. You have to get everyone in the world to agree because the United States cannot say Apollo needs to be a heritage site because that would be claiming territory. That would be saying, this is our territory and we are claiming this as a heritage site, violation of the Outer Space Treaty. And it's
Uh-huh.
not just that, Thomas. We don't want China to do that either. So that's why,
Yeah.
and we don't want Russia to do that, right?
And that's my biggest irrational fear that keeps me up at night. It's China would go to the moon, go to one of these sites, go to Tranquility Base, you know, rub out a bunch of footprints and bring back our flag just to say they did it, and
Absolutely. That
and-
is, and that is actually how we got started. So
yeah.
Jan Werner, who was the head of the European Space Agency at the time, in 2017, he was visiting China and he had a presser. And at the presser, he's like, China, you must join Europe to go back to the moon, if only to take down those American flags. And I was like, hold
Really?
on a minute.
Whoa.
He was joking,
Uh-huh.
he says, but I'm like, That's not right. You cannot do that." And we know all too well how easy it is to change history, right? And so we cannot allow that to happen. We see, especially with China, that I'm a little bit less concerned about that than I am of them, because what we've seen them do here on Earth is they find a Chinese shipwreck, and then they just extend their sovereignty from their shore all the way to the shipwreck, wherever that might be,
Right.
and so that's what, when we talk about protecting heritage, it's as much about protecting heritage as it is about um, y- making sure the system isn't. Uh, I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying it. A a made for TV way of saying it. Um,
Uh-huh.
is not corrupted, right?
Okay.
So so this is what we thought, and it's like I said, it started as a very visceral American reaction. I'm a foreign service brat. I grew up overseas.
Yeah.
I saw the flag flying over the embassy. I was protected by Marine security guards. That flag means a lot to me, and so that was my immediate visceral reaction. But then you look back and you realize, okay, there's more than 115 sites on the moon with evidence of human activity. And
Right.
don't forget, the first two objects to impact the lunar surface were Soviet, right? So
Hmm.
this isn't about America.
Right. Right.
This
Right.
is
Right.
about protecting our history and understanding how we got to the moon and understanding the history of
Yeah.
that, and everything that was wrapped up in it. And then think about this. Um, Here on Earth, every nation has ratified the UNESCO World Heritage Convention.
Hmm.
We understand it's important to protect heritage, no matter where it is in the world, right? We respect that. So let's
Yeah.
take that to space with us. And then all of a sudden, we are carving out areas that we are protecting. Feels a little bit like property, right? That you
Hmm.
cannot, because what is property? Property is the right to exclude.
Yeah.
So we are
Exactly.
multilaterally deciding that we are excluding people from these sites.
Right.
And so we're protecting history and creating a foundation for the establishment of property rights in space.
Hmm. So the thing is, and what about the practical side of that? Even if you get a new agreement that everybody signs off on, we're going to protect these 115 now heritage sites. You just send people to the moon and build a wall around all of them using, use Star Trek parlance, transparent aluminum. We're gonna put it there so you can go up there, and if you have the good enough binoculars, you can see, everything. Because some of this, I mean, the Apollo 11 sites probably be pretty easy. they didn't go very far. Part of Apollo 11 and 12, and maybe even 14. But once they started using rovers, it's game over, man. I don't know
Yeah.
what you do with that. They're driving, a mile or two away, and then so that makes it impractical to build a wall around the whole thing. Nobody will get to see anything. What do you do?
So, okay, first of all, I don't think all 115 sites on the moon need to be protected. So the first thing we need to do is figure out some uh, ground rules. What's going to be protected, what's not. And I've heard people say everything up until this day. I've heard lots of different things, but never mind. So let's just say we're protecting. We figured out a way to identify which sites we want to protect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the only way we can protect them right now is to forbid entry. We don't have the technology to go up and see them up close and personal without ruining them
Mm-hmm. Right.
because of the plume effect, right?
Yep.
So by necessity, we have to create these zones. I'm calling them managed access protocols. The protocol
Okay.
is do not access the site because you're going to ruin it. And at some point we're going to have the technology. I don't know, Madhu Tangavelu, he had this idea that you would put people on stilts and then you wouldn't, mess up the regolith as much, right? Or maybe you do a cable car over. Who knows how we're going to do it? But if we're going
Yeah.
to figure out a way to
Right.
get to and
Right.
study and
Right.
and view the
Yeah.
sites.
And it may just be like an electronic boundary for now.
Yep.
You have these things put out there because, like you use for your dog, it's it's like an electronic boundary, and it just warns you, warning, you're approaching this thing, and it gets
Yep.
louder in your helmet as you get closer. I don't know what you do at that point. You zap them or something, but
But yeah, that's you're right. It's like drones, geofencing. Let's just
yep,
put in, yeah,
geofencing.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably how we'll do it. Um, I got an interesting thing. One of our guys, Doug Plotter, called in. Um, she's wondering if you could, if yeah, protecting off Earth artifacts that will be created in the future. So is anything you do now, if you succeed at the UN and get these things passed, would that also be effective for anything we do 100 years from now?
Yes. So this is what's brilliant about looking at this now, right? Right
Yeah.
now, you talked about the footsteps in Laetoli from 3 million years ago. We didn't discover those until 1970, right?
Uh-huh.
3 million years later. Well, you know what? We have the presence of mind to identify these sites now. We don't want 3 million years from now some poor archaeologist like walking around the moon trying to find Neil Armstrong's blueprint, right?
Yeah.
We recognize these technological achievements, and so we can protect them. And when I say protect them too, this is really important because a lot of people are like, "Wow, you are so anti-development." That's not true. When we talk about protect, there are different ways to do that. You can record it, right? Take pictures of it. When you build a road in England, you always run into some dead king, right? But they don't stop the road and say, "Okay, we can't build the road here," right? They take
Mhm.
pictures of the king and then they move all his bones somewhere special, right? So this is, we just need to be mindful, and I'm not a heritage expert.
Okay.
My goal is to get the law in place for the heritage experts, but somebody else can decide. Well, all right, maybe we don't need to protect this, or as is shown on your screen, yeah, let's be mindful of this stuff. We lost so many artifacts after Apollo. They just threw away those computers, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so be mindful, and let's figure out how to do this. We want to have our goal at For All Moonkind is a treaty to protect cultural heritage everywhere in outer space.
Okay. On that topic, of course, Wes has a question, and he asked, which of the recent developments in UN COPUOS is the most advantageous to establishing heritage sites? Could you explain to me what UN COPUOS is
Yes,
first?
so Wes is well familiar with the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space,
Ah,
and it's two subcommittees. It meets 3 times a year, and there's two things in particular that are happening, which are affecting the conversation about property rights as well as the conversation about heritage protection. One is there's a working group on the legal aspects of space resource utilization. can you get a more UN sounding name than that, right? Oh, I do have a better UN sounding name than that coming up. But so
Okay.
this is a traditional working group. It has a 5-year span, and the goal is to come up with recommended principles for space resource utilization. That is a slow moving vehicle. So when we negotiated the remote sensing guidelines, I say we, I was just a wee little girl when it was happening, maybe not so little, but it took us 17 years to come up with voluntary guidelines about remote sensing. Okay. It's going
Hmm.
to take us a long time to come up with voluntary guidelines about space resource activities.
Right.
So that's aside. It's nice to see it moving along. The chair, Stephen Freeland, is phenomenal. Then we have this thing called ATLAC. Isn't that a great name? The Action Team on Lunar Activity Consultations.
Wow.
And that is supposed to be a little bit more nimble. And its goal is to try and figure out how to prevent conflict on the moon, right, with all the new lunar activities. So I think that is right now our best hope for protecting heritage and for starting the process of understanding. So property starts with the idea of due regard, right? Article 9 of the Outer Space Treaty. What does it mean to have due regard, and who has the right to have due regard shown to them? And so, as we talk about uh, information sharing, transparency, we're really talking about due regard, and that's going to start laying the groundwork for what nobody's going to call property, but is actually akin to property rights.
Hmm. Okay. Now here's the thing that also raises another question, because we're trying to create all these things. We're trying to create heritage sites in here and there. Where does the ISS fit in this, or is it
So,
too late for them?
yeah, protect the ISS, right? Move it up into a higher orbit, in a graveyard orbit, and make it a museum at someday. Okay, so
It's been talked about a lot.
that
No one
that's
takes it seriously,
That's the
but
dream, right? But
yep.
here's the problem. The liability convention
Yeah.
says that you are liable for that object forever and ever and ever and ever. So you are
Hmm.
asking then the American taxpayer to foot the bill to move the ISS into a higher orbit and then keep it in the higher orbit. We have something called gravity, so it's going to keep getting drawn down, so we've got to keep going back and pushing it up.
Right. And they keep, but there is talk about putting it in a place like, L1, or kind of hang there, more or less.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
Lagrange point.
Yeah, yeah. That would also be a lot of money.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, okay. If we can convince the taxpayer plus, I mean, let's think about some of the best preservation models we have. The Statue of Liberty, right?
Hmm.
Lee Iacocca used a lot of Chrysler funds, raised a lot of funds from corporations to replenish, rebuild, refresh the Statue of Liberty. Notre Dame raised, tens of millions of dollars in one day from corporations to refurbish it. So, you know what? If we're serious about moving station to L1, then we need to get some corporations behind it.
The big ones
I
need to
don't think
step
the
up.
taxpayer should foot the bill
Yep.
for that.
Yep. Exactly right. Oh, okay. Wow. My mind is still spinning from all of this. Okay, now you also at For All Moonkind, you created actually, you say that you founded internally their Institute on Space Law and Ethics. Is that an actual program that's available for graduate study at UMIS, or
It's
is it something
no,
else?
at this point it's just more of a think tank kind of thing.
Okay.
We don't I like to form things, but we never get any money for them. So it's just an excuse to get really smart people in a room together and start thinking. And the idea behind the institute is really also uh, the crux is also this concept of property. We're not gonna there's no way we're gonna have some nice grand um, treaty on space resource utilization, right? There's not going to be any laws about it. We will be lucky if we get a non-binding resolution within 20 years. So there's going to be a lot happening. The law's not keeping up. So the idea behind the institute is understanding um, what what ethics what do we all share as humanity? Let's
Mhm.
find the things we can reach common ground on and
Right.
build up from there. So the other reason I think that maybe the viewers of this show would appreciate that I created this, one of the really strongest motivating factors is every space ethicist I know is like, oh, we got to stop, put on the brakes. We don't know what we're getting into. We're not ready for this. You know what? It's inevitable.
Yeah.
So, put
Yeah.
on your
Yeah.
big girl panties and get out there and figure out how we're going to deal with it. Uh, So,
Exactly right. Exactly right. Because we got to be ready for all of it, especially when the real aliens come.
right.
Yeah, that'll be the next thing. We finally got our property rights show up, and we got that figured out. And now here come the Arcturians, and they want to build a base.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, oh, now what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might unite humanity, but Thomas, I just finished my summer class today. It's an asynchronous class, and I was doing the recording, and I was talking about property rights. That's how I ended, because I ended on ethics, and that's one of the biggest ethical issues to me, is property rights. Because as Wes, I'm sure, told you, Article 17 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights says every human has the right to own property, and why
Hmm.
would we give that up when we go to space?
Right.
And what I do for my class is I do a slideshow of all of the walls that we've built here on Earth. It's so important to us. I mean, from
Hmm.
from when we were first like cognizant of being able to pile rocks on top of each other, we've
Right.
wanted to protect. It's an instinct, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not just humans. A lot of species have this instinct. Birds build nests, for crying
Beavers.
out loud. Beavers,
And I lived in
and
Pennsylvania, big beaver dam in my neighborhood. Yeah.
and try approaching that beaver dam. That beaver's not gonna be very happy.
Yeah.
So this is an animal instinct
Right.
to
Right.
wanna
Right.
protect. You can't take that away from the human just because 'cause
Yeah.
they're in space.
But you raise an interesting point because about ethics, because ethics are not always native to humans. That is an intellectual concept that you kind of have to, learn somehow through a thing called civilization. And so I know you're involved in establishing a ground base for ethical behavior in the high frontier. I'd like to know a little more about that and what that means to you and how do you promote that?
So it's been a really fascinating journey because, of course, the first question is what you alluded to, whose ethics, right?
Yeah.
And I was in a class with a space ethicist, and she said, "I think we can all agree ethically that we don't eat cats and dogs." And I'm like,
Oh, really?
"Yeah." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. I'm half Chinese. I lived in China for 10 years. I'm pretty
Uh-huh.
sure I've had dog. I don't remember, but I'm sure it was just served because that's what you do."
Yep.
And so I said, "No, I can't agree with that." And it just stalled the conversation on space ethics for like 10 minutes.
Sure. Well, the thing
Um,
is, because we have 200 countries in the world, but we have
right,
thousands of societies and many thousands of cultures. And it's all different everywhere you go. Yeah, people do eat cats in Australia. In parts of the Australian outback,
right,
there are tribal people out there that eat cats. Uh, but that's also a common thing in certain parts of Asia as well. You know
right,
this,
right.
having lived there. Um, Yeah, I lived in Nepal for a while. They eat some interesting things that we
Yeah,
might not consider very tasty in Western culture.
right.
And so, yeah, how do you decide?
And when you think about what is ethics and philosophy and morality, guess who does the most thinking about that? White men. And I'm not suggesting that they aren't good at it. I think we've had some amazing white men, male philosophers, but we don't have a lot of voices from Africa
Right.
expounding on deep thoughts, right? And
No.
so we have this monopoly of deep thinking in Western culture and Chinese culture, some Asian cultures, but we really need to open that up more. So our
Sure.
goal is to get more of those voices in. And so the past year and a half, we've been largely silent because I've been trying to reach out to people who would be comfortable. This is a comfort issue for many
Uh-huh.
people. I don't want to talk about my beliefs, like why would I do that? Why would I share that? It's very personal.
Right.
And so trying to get people to share these personal beliefs, because that is where we connect. We don't connect as, you know, uh, Chinese and Russians and Australians and Frenchmen. We connect as humans. And
Hmm.
so that's what we're trying to do, is find those connections, and we call it ethics. That's all.
Okay. All right. So how you're promoting this, though, I guess that was the idea, because I know you want to promote something officially, how we figure out the ethics of space when we start going there in large numbers.
So right now, my biggest uh, podium, my biggest sandbox is the UN COPUOS, the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space.
Okay.
I also, talk every chance I get and come on to programs like yours every opportunity I have, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Um, but it's word of mouth, and it's like the more and more people sort of jumping on the bandwagon and agreeing, oh yeah, let's get more voices, let's get more voices. But so what I found, and it's been really fascinating to move from corporate law into academia, because corporate law is all action, almost without thinking, right? Oh, just another contract. Okay, wait, what did you need in it? What are the numbers? And whereas academia is like, oh, deep thoughts, no action, no action,
Uh-huh.
just deep thoughts. And
That, yeah.
so here I am in the middle, like, no, 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 we need action, we need action, we need action. And you need to start thinking, commercial industry, start thinking, because, and this is my plea to the commercial industry, is there are no rules right now. You can make the rules. You can make the rules that you want. Just make sure you're being responsible. And then guess what? Congress is pretty lazy. And so if you
Hmm.
show that you're just you're demonstrating good behavior, and you're not starting fights or doing stupid things or blowing things up, then Congress is going to be like, oh, well, why don't we just codify the rules they made up for themselves? That's what we did in banking. That's what we did for the motion picture industry.
Yep.
So this is such an incredible opportunity for commercial industry to prove
It's,
to the
yeah.
world. Yeah.
It's what we did for launch permits. When 2004, when that act passed, we that created was known as AST out of FAA. That was the Office of
Yes.
Space, Transportation, um, Commercial Space Transportation, and that was run very successfully for a long time, and they've regulated with a very light touch. But and anybody on the inside, on the insider, will tell you that was a captive agency. Us in the
Yeah.
space advocacy movement were in there at the beginning, helping them write the foundation for how they're going to run that thing. So of course,
Yep.
we're going to have a nice ride for at least 10 years, and it's been a nice ride.
Yep.
And now we've gone from nothing to a $625 billion industry.
Exactly.
Going expecting to double by 2035.
Yep.
So how much more? Right? So they've talked about regulation with a heavier hand, but no one's. Thank God, Congress moves so slowly. No one's actually thought to actually do something about that yet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
here we are.
Exactly. And again, an incredible opportunity for commercial industry to come together.
Yeah.
And you know what? Talking about property rights, why doesn't the Commercial Space Federation agree amongst themselves that when somebody lands on the lunar surface, and they set up a certain, this was my last scenario for my class.
Uh huh.
Somebody points to an asteroid very publicly, has a fundraising campaign, help us get to this asteroid, we're going to mine this asteroid, and so they get the money to fund a spacecraft, right? And
Hmm.
so they make it to the asteroid and they're like, "Yay, you made it." And wow, it's really got a lot of stuff, but we can't do anything. Now is the next step. Well, imagine if there's another organization that's been in stealth mode. That while this organization was doing the exploring and so forth, this one was just waiting. And then
Hmm.
they land on the asteroid and they start mining. So
Yeah.
who's in the right?
Yeah, we had that discussion a while back. There was a idea of having you might have a corporate entity that's claimed certain space on the moon, let's say, and they're mining a certain thing. But what if some small, fly by night contender encroaches on some of the area that they've claimed because they found a lovely little bit of rare earth metals over here that
Yeah.
they're not looking for. And they'll say, well, we'll just sneak over here and get that and sell it, and then when we plate it out, we'll leave, and they'll never be the wiser. And if they are, who cares? Again, the cops are too far away. What do you do? And they'll
So,
say,
and the who do you want answering that question? Your peers? We need to set up some sort of mediation
no, I
arbitration
want
panel.
Michelle Hanlon to answer this
Well,
question.
yes, but that's the point is do you want Michelle Hanlon to answer that, or do you want it to be answered by some justices on the International Court of Justice
Yeah.
who, have never looked at space law before, right?
Right.
Or anything.
Yeah. And we have discussed that is that, yeah, by the time those justices get to work on something, the damage is already done.
Right.
The transgressors are long gone and
So
left their junk behind. And as someone just said here a minute ago, it's kind of the same as Earth. You can only really own what you can defend.
right. But if the commercial industry creates their own rules about, and I don't know if you can reach Chinese commercial industry, but you say, hey, let's just make this rule that if I'm doing this, I automatically have rights to 20 feet, 20 yards, 200 yards, I don't know,
Yep.
whatever it is around that object. And everyone in our federation's going to agree.
Yeah.
And at least you started something, right?
Yeah.
And then other people want to be in your federation because
Right.
whatever, then their stuff will get respected.
And that's actually based on an old property rights kind of Austrian school, a libertarian point of view, which is you take land that no one's ever used, you've mixed your labor with the land, as they put it, and you created a value where none previously existed, and then you claim that is your property that you can defend. And
And
that's a kind of a concept that's actually traveled well.
and that's something that commercial industry can implement by itself.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying is, you can implement whatever you want because it's commercial industry that's going to be up there first.
Yeah.
And then when you get up there and you have your 5 different mining operations and you guys have all agreed to something, you guys and gals have all agreed to some rules of the road, and then China comes along and tries to bust it up, then the United States is going to come to your defense and say, no, 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 that we approve these rules. No,
Uh-huh.
China, you can't. So
Right.
that's
Right.
the way to do it. You can't get on the world stage and be like, I demand to own property in space, right?
Right.
It's never going to get you anywhere. But you can take these baby steps that lead you to that same eventuality.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a couple of folks on here talking about what they consider they had their own name for it. I've kind of forgotten it, but but it's basically a port authority model where you create a private institution. You're going to take this area that's available, and we're going to get a bunch of people together and a lot of different companies doing different things, but they sign on to this one covenant and agree to behave under that covenant, and they charge a little fee, like a port authority model would do, a docking fee for your container ship, and run it that way, and protect the property rights that way,
So I
because
I am
you've agreed to the model, and
I'm all for that, except for the part where the Port Authority makes money. I don't see why you need an institution that makes
yep,
money. Like you can do this, especially now. There's not that many, right? You
right,
can you can start this now, and then
sure,
but not don't create that institution. Start it from the ground up. Don't start imposing and giving.
hmm,
I don't know how you give an institution territory. Like, I don't
yeah,
understand, but
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
if it's 4 or 5 companies, 10 or 12 companies, like this is how we're going to relate to each other. Not a
right,
lot of people nobody can complain about that.
yeah, exactly. Um, is anybody doing anything, or are you doing anything about it, like officially doing like a space ethics institute? Is there a website or a place?
I've just started my Substack, um,
Okay. All
Space
right.
Law at Space Law and Ethics,
Okay.
and we are in the process of creating a more formal structure so that we can get funding.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say we're on hold until January 2026. But we have some really great leads for funding, and that's where,
Okay.
we'll start seeing stuff.
Okay. We got a couple minutes. So I want to do the thing I wanted to do at the end is like your view of everything, a view of whether it's space law or space property rights or just the industry in general and how we're going to the moon, Mars, and beyond. What does the world look like to you 5 years from now, and then what does it look like to you 25 years from now?
So 5 years from now, I definitely see Chinese nationals on the moon.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure I see Americans back on the moon, unfortunately.
Really? Okay. All
Um,
right.
and so I see too much uncertainty with that. But yeah, I think there will be humans back on the moon for sure.
Okay.
I right now believe they will be Chinese humans, but we'll see. Knock on, fingers
All right.
crossed.
All right.
Um, but 25 years from now, and I'm going to stay focused on the moon. I see two thriving communities on the moon. I see a U.S. led one and a Chinese led one, and I think that they are living, and I'm going to use a Chinese word, living in harmony on the moon, regardless of
Hmm.
what's happening down here. And I my uh, almost everything that I do is grounded in the belief that we won't have peace on Earth until we are very successful in space.
Yeah.
And so I think that
Okay.
that we need to have as many communities in space as we can in order to achieve that here on Earth. So yeah, so 25 years from now, I see two communities of humans living and working on the moon. I think we've been to Mars. I don't think we have humans living on Mars yet.
Okay. All right. Outstanding. Michelle Hanlon, uh, partner at ABH Space Law, drone warrior extraordinaire, and someone who wants to make certain parts of the moon heritage sites, which I fully agree with. It's a wonderful thing. And you do great work in the world, and thank God we have you. Thank you so much for being on this program. I hope we get to see you again sometime.
Anytime, Thomas. Thank you.
Okay. Nice to have you. And stick around afterwards. Okay, we got a few minutes left. I thought I'd do a little PSA tonight before we leave because Michael's not here, and so um, and it's something about given the budget thing. It's about NASA. One of the budget things I've been seeing, and I guess I'm hearing today that some of the Congress has restored some of the funding to some of the science stuff. They've also restored 10 billion for Artemis for whatever reason, and that which goes wildly against everything space advocacy believes in at this point. And so I went back to thinking from a lot of my studies on various things, because I'm an inveterate reader, and I read this book a long time ago by a guy named Carroll Quigley. Some of you may have heard about him. He was an academic and a scholar and a philosopher basically. And he wrote a great book, which is kind of dog-eared on my shelf. It's called Evolution of Civilizations. In that book, he describes what really goes on and how we build higher and higher societies and what happens. Um, Originally, we are social animals. We like to get together in large groups and do things for the betterment of everybody and build infrastructure and build cities ultimately. And we also build these things socially and politically. And usually in the beginning, they're just instruments. It's a way for us to work collectively more efficiently to get certain things done and accomplished so we can build cities and build schools and build, um, farms and build all sorts of things civilizations do. Um, Over time, invariably, these instruments become institutions. And when they become institutions, they take on a life of their own. And they often go against the very principles on which those instruments were created to begin with. And it happens every time throughout human history. He gave incredible examples in his book of this, and it's happening here today in this country. Obviously, with the idea of trying to reform NASA and open it up and using and going to the private sector more and saving like crap tons of money and really sending lots and lots of material and people out into the solar system. and we've just taken a giant step backwards this past couple of weeks. And it's really the forces of zero change that are involved in this. So there's only four, as Quigley said, there's only four things you can do when you're confronted with a situation like that. You can just say the hell with it and kick the can down the road for another generation and let NASA struggle on the way it does. You can try to reform the institution through public means. We've tried that a few times and it hasn't gone so well. We can keep trying if we want to. The third thing is essentially just, well, let's just tear it all down and start over with a blank sheet. That has happened on rare occasions in human history, not very often. Odds are it's not going to happen here. Or what's happened a lot, and it's happened a lot even in contemporary civilizations, you kind of build a virtual wall around the institution. You just kind of let it do what it's going to do, but the rest of us go ahead and do something else anyway and just kind of work around it. And we begin to craft a new instrument, maybe in the end, from scratch, either a public one or a private one or some combination that actually helps us get somewhere and get the job done. And we just kind of let the institution sit over there and have its way, and we just kind of ignore each other. But we get to move forward. Those are your choices. And so, which one you think would be the most useful one, and the more or the easiest to accomplish? That's up to you. But right now, I just want to put it out there that we have an institutional problem, and it's and we have to solve it somehow, or we're not going to get very far. So Thursday, our guest will be Eva Blaisdell, also known as Lady Rocket, co-founder of Copernic Space and Lady Rocket Foundation, and we're going to discuss digital ownership of space assets, space-themed media, and youth engagement. As always, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I want to extend a huge thanks, not only to those who regularly see this podcast live, but all the new friends we've made in our YouTube and Spotify and Apple channels. The numbers are climbing each week, and we really appreciate the support and encouragement. And so for Michael Lane and Sean Key, from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, this is Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.